Yeah, I think you're seeing certainly some strides in that direction, and it's how you present what you want to present to the players. As far as analytically, whether it's launch angles or whatever the fact, and you have to have the right personality to be able to do that. You have to understand which players you can give a lot of information to, which players, you get a little too. We feel like our staff's pretty good at it. Darren Bush and Scott Emerson do a good job with the pitchers and the position players. So I think at this point in time we're happy with what we have right now. But the more you see it, it's kind of a trend that you'll see more of.
Yeah, what about the actual non-traditional hiring, though, guys coming in?
Right. Right.
Well,
I don't know. I mean, some of the other organizations do it already, and I think they've had some success. And if you get some buy-in from, some of the premier players, certainly in the case with Houston, when you get a Justin Verlander that buys into that, then it's going to be easy to sell it to some of the other guys. So I think it's just as much the personality of the person that you're bringing in, but also the guys that you hook.
Bob, you guys are in a little bit of an unusual situation coming off of playoff appearance and having so many goals, particularly in the rotation.
Right.
How do you see things? So many needs
right.
in the starting.
Well, the one thing that we don't talk a lot about is the fact that we're going to have a lot of guys coming back at some point. So I think part of our decision is holding down the fort until we get some of these injured pitchers back. And you're talking about a lot of them. I mean, even down to the Caprillions and Jeffries and guys like that we feel like are going to have great careers with us. So you have to balance what you think is the need for now and what the need is down the road as far as signing a guy to a multi-year. We saw last year we had some issues with the rotation. We were able to identify some guys to hold down the fort and perform for us. Certainly the bullpen is a strength for us and continues to be. So yes, we want to bring in some starters, but I don't think we're in a hurry to go out and be like a market maker and have to dole out some 3-year deals. Yeah, I could. I think we're a little bit, we're used to it, so to speak, and you're seeing other teams do it too, and I think you'll see more of it next year. So, yeah, I think depending on who we identify as guys that we need to get innings from, and then maybe if there's some vulnerability with some other guys, maybe that's the route we go as far as the opener, and yeah, I think that is here to stay.
David was mentioning yesterday that Triggs is more of a relief option.
Right.
Guy?
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that for him, but I think that we're past the point of trying to get, 6 or 7 innings out of him. I just don't think physically he's able to do it. So whether that's length in the middle of a game, whether that's a potential opener, wherever, but we're with the injuries that we've had from him, we don't want to have to, count on him for, starter type innings. Right.
And also there's some things that he'd like to get done first.
Right.
Chris seems to be the kind of guy that probably is okay with him to not be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he'd like to get something done. I think he wants to remain with us. He's been open about that. But he is coming back, so there's still time to be able to get that done. But yeah, I mean, I think like anybody, there's some he sees the needs that we have to address right now, yet he's always a priority for us. So there's ongoing dialogue for him, but there's not the urgency of having to get it done for, say, spring training. Right. I thought even in last year or the year before, earlier in the season, he was on the verge of being ready. The strikeouts, commanding the strike zone is going to be kind of tell the tale where he goes. But we'll never really know until he gets an opportunity and has an opportunity to potentially struggle and then stick with them and get through it. I think that's when we'll see what Franklin Barreto has to offer us. Now, having said that, Jed Lowry is still a bit of a priority for us. And, if that's not Jed, then how do we, go about the Franklin situation? Do we want to platoon with him? Do we want to give him the job? Is there, he's athletic enough to play other positions too. So I think once we figure out where we're going with Jed, then I'll have a little better idea where the needs are with Frankie.
What were your impressions of Luzardo last spring, and does it sound to you like maybe he's major league?
I think he is. I mean, based on what I'm hearing from all our guys in development, what we saw in spring training last year too, and we ran him out there against a formidable lineup and did it on purpose, and he's the type of kid that if you talk to him, what is he, 20? It doesn't seem like that. And when he's on the mound, there's some presence to him that maybe you don't typically see from a younger guy. I was asked, yesterday if there was a kind of a comp, and I remember Felix Hernandez when I was with Seattle. We were thinking about early on how quickly was he going to get to the big league level. And I think there's probably some similarities with Luzardo in the fact that he's awfully talented. Obviously, there's a need for us at this point, and I think the way we went about his season last year would suggest that, we're going to bring him to spring training this year with an opportunity to start with us.
Kind of a two-part question here. How has your job as manager changed from your first year in 2006? And how has the player-manager relationship changed from when you were a player?
It's changed significantly with analytics and the front office being, more in touch with lineups and the day-to-day operation that maybe a manager, had control of in years past. The front office has always been at the forefront of signing and putting together a roster, but now it's the day-to-day stuff. So, that's just something that, you have some smart people that are, you have opinions from, and you're trying to make good decisions based on maybe a few more people involved now. And I think that's a good thing. And as far as the relation with the player, it really hasn't changed for me as a manager. I remember when I was a younger player and Sparky Anderson was my first big league manager, I was scared to even go have a conversation with him. So it's not that way now. We're not only are we communicative as managers with the 25-man roster that we have, but it's also deep into our system. I'll go over to the minor league camp in spring training and watch some games over there, a few innings over there, and get to know those guys. So they're that much more comfortable once they get to, with us in spring training. So it's changed pretty significantly as far as that goes. I think it's my day during the season is pretty much the same as it's been. There's a lot more information to digest, and there's a few more people that you're in contact with before a game or lineups or whatever. But as far as my preparation and what I do from a day-to-day basis, that really hasn't changed a whole lot. It's tough. It's tough to forecast. Each guy's a little bit different as far as coming back from those type of injuries. So, and I don't think, when they come back, whether it's 12, 14 months, that you can expect them to be at their best. I think it's once you get through that next year and then you're into your next year that maybe the expectations are a little bit higher. But each guy's different. I mean, some guys come back throwing bullets right away. Other guys take a little bit more time. So we'll see with him. I know he's working really hard. I saw him the other day at our complex, and he's been working diligently, and he's looking forward to try to get himself ready to have a good season this year.
Bob, you've been with the A's for a while now. What have you learned about working with Billy Beane and the way that his mind works? And have you seen him change at all in your time?
I think the fact that we had a good relationship before I was a manager here allowed us to come together pretty quickly, and it was, my first year was interim, so we're a little bit more at stake that year. You got to, in a half a year, you have to kind of show the organization what you can do, and I think our relationship helped as far as that went. But our discussions and our day-to-day interactions have been pretty consistent. Obviously with David with an elevated role now too, the three of us always have conversations every day. But once you're around somebody for a period of time, then you kind of know what they're thinking at times, and what routes you're going to go. And so it's been pretty seamless here. It's been really easy for me to work with these guys, and the fact that I've been around for a little while means that we work pretty well together.
Bob, despite some of the holes you have in the roster, what's your excitement level, especially some of the young guys who progressed so well last year, Chapman, Olsen,
Right.
Loriano, guys like that?
Right, and Loriano kind of came out of nowhere. We knew he had a talent level that was potentially, after the injury, he was going to get with us at some point, but to be as impactful as he was probably a lot to expect. But you look around our infield, in the years that all those guys had last year, and all were in Gold Glove consideration, including Jed last year. So, we're pretty happy with where we are on the infield. Obviously the Barreto-Lowry situation still to be determined, but Stephen Piscotty, he's the guy that kind of goes under the radar. When I'm talking about guys, Chapman and Olsen's easy to talk about, the strides Marcus has made, and but Stephen Piscotty ended up being a real mainstay for us last year, and not only was he out there every day, he had to go through a lot, and then maybe probably ended up having the best season that he's had. So, when you look at our team last year, I don't know that anybody kind of embodied what we were about more than Stephen Piscotty, and the production would show that too. So he was a great acquisition for us. I don't speak enough about him. I get asked questions about a lot of other guys, not as much. I'm not allowed to talk about him as much as I'd like to. I'm glad you asked about him.
The Gold Glove recognition, you knew how good those guys were.
Right.
Everybody around the block thought.
Right.
What did it say about the fact they were recognized throughout the game?
Right, and going in, we knew the two corner guys. We had a pretty good idea, but to be Gold Glovers in their first year, it's remarkable. And then to see the strides that Marcus made to be in consideration for a Gold Glove, Jed too, and his durability to be, and you look at us a year or 2 years before that, we were not a good defensive team at all, and now I think we're one of the better defensive teams in baseball. So it's come together pretty quickly. Our coaching staff does a great job working with these guys. Maddie's been terrific for these guys, and Al as well on the infield portion of it, and Rhino and Aldo at the outfield and everything. We've gone from what is a poor defensive team to a very good one right now, and that had a lot to do with the results we had last year.
How much time did you spend watching Oklahoma football this year?
I've more than I expected to, yeah, and continue to. So we are pulling hard for them. I mean, you're reading before the season started, is he going to be a starter? Or is he going to be the starter there? And next thing you know, he's a Heisman Trophy winner, and now has a chance to win a national championship. So we are big Oklahoma fans right now, for sure. It's kind of tough to watch him scramble around a little bit sometimes, but still, it's exciting.
Bob, this time last year, nobody really knew what to expect from Shohei Ohtani. You saw it through a season. And what do you think, not only what he did, but do you think there's going to be a change in the way people view the possibilities in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what he did, we were lucky enough to see him early in the season when he was on top of his game pitching-wise. He almost threw a no-hitter against us one day, early in the season. So he came as advertised. I was, how do you do this, both ends of it? And he did it pretty seamlessly. And obviously could have had the surgery done a little bit earlier, but wanted to stay with his team and perform offensively. We had a little bit more on him on the pitching end than we did on the offensive end, and we knew he, looking at the stuff, that he would be a premier performer. But offensively, I had no idea he was that good, and he is. So he's pretty unique in what he does. I mean, it maybe opens up, some avenues for some other people to do it, but it's not that easy, and he made it look easy.
Mr. Melvin, related to that last question, you'll see him as a hitter going closer to next year.
Right. We had trouble this year. I don't know. I mean, now that he knows the league a little bit more, and it seems like as the season went along, he got more and more confident. Power hitting the ball the other way. That we had some ideas on how we thought we could get him out, and then the next time we saw him, you weren't getting him out that way anymore. So if I knew, I probably wouldn't tell you anyway. But he's a star. There's no doubt about it. And
Bring more lefties against him, or?
well, his numbers against lefties were lower last year, but every time I brought in a lefty for him, he got a hit. So he looks like he's taking care of that issue too.
Bob, some of the value that J.D. Martinez brought to the Red Sox this year was unquantifiable, not just his presence in the lineup, but his impact on his teammates in the way he talked to them about hitting
Right.
and approach. You know, who is that guy for you? Both guy or guy?
Oh, well, I think Jed was our guy last year for us, and the most experienced guy, switch hitter, understands mechanics both sides, understands what he needs to do to be successful, but then also understands the new, the analytics too. He understands launch angles and exit velocities, and was a nice kind of player coach for us. Well, with to help Bushy out with some of our younger guys too. So it's yet to be determined whether or not we're going to have him back. But I would say if you're picking a guy that was like that, it would be Jed for us.
Yeah, has the definition of veteran leadership changed in any way with that in mind? That you not only need to carry yourself as a veteran, but pass on this type of information?
Yeah, I don't think that's changed. The information's changed, but I don't think the leadership qualities from the guys you need and every team needs has changed. I think that's pretty consistent, and right away when you get guys who are the guys that are going to be a little bit more instrumental along those lines. It's just the numbers and the analytics and some of the things that we're teaching have changed a little bit, but not the leadership part.
There's been talk in recent weeks about either changing or eliminating the shift. Where would you fall on this?
Yeah, I don't like that. I mean, there's an easy way to combat that. Just hit the ball the other way. And if you start hitting the ball the other way and getting hits that way, it's going to shift back around. I mean, baseball is a game of adjustments. So I'm not for that. We'll see where it goes.
What do you think of the division right now, especially with Seattle now kind of joining Texas as maybe in a little bit of a rebuild?
Right.
phase?
Yeah, you never really know. I mean, when younger players perform, you see what happened with us last year, and I don't think anybody predicted us doing what we did last year. So, you have to, we're lucky enough to see our teams in spring and get a little bit of a handle on them before you start. But man, there's so many younger players that are impactful now that it's tough to, forecast and say this is what this team's going to do and what they're not going to do. And it's different for us too now. With Bannister not in Texas and Soch not in Anaheim, there are going to be a lot of changes and things that maybe we have to look at a little bit differently on teams. So yeah, I don't count anybody out in our division. It can flip in a hurry. A little bit, yeah. There's probably something to that. It's a little bit more of a lift to it, and guys are probably a little bit more understanding of. When I played, I had no idea mechanically what I was doing compared to some of these guys now, and you have better instruction now too. But I think what you're seeing is pitching trying to combat that with more up and down than side to side. So, guys that are launch angles are a little bit lower and trying to lift, you're seeing guys pitch at the top of the zone because it's tough for them to handle that, or depth to a breaking ball. I think the cutter and the slider and the changeup, and now you're seeing more high fastballs and curveballs off a high fastball to try to combat what the hitters are doing to get the edge. The solution for me is with 2 strikes, make an adjustment. And, I think back in 2001, I was at the Diamondbacks. We won the World Series that year, and Luis Gonzalez was our best player. And he was up with a man on third and less than 2 outs in a World Series. And it was the first time he choked up all year to try to get that big hit. So it's understanding the situation. And a lot of times it's with 2 strikes. And once you're able to make some adjustments and do some things a little bit differently, then it's going to flip around again. So I remember succinctly when he said it was the first time I choked up all year, because he understood the situation and what was at stake at that point in time. And here was a guy that was a home run hitter with, a scoop to his swing, and and this situation didn't call for that, and he was able to do it in a situation that was the biggest in Arizona's history. Yeah. Yeah, I think he's terrific. I've had him in Arizona when I managed there. I've had him here. I've had him as a bench coach. I've had him as a third base coach. He's one of the great instructors. He's a true instructor. I think if you're looking at where that team's going and maybe breaking it down, having some younger players there, that's right up his alley. And he really did a nice job in Arizona, I thought, especially the first year. So I'm pulling hard for him. Yeah. Yep. About the what?
About the position.
Well, I pull for him. Other than that, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Probably more so just getting consistent at bats at the big league level. Now, we've seen at times him be really good about controlling the strike zone, and that's when he has a ton of success. And then it's at times when he struggles some that maybe he starts to try to expand a little bit more, and that's what I was talking about. When's the time to let him get through a struggle and see how he is on the other side of that? So I think he has the ability to do it. He works really hard. He's one of the hardest working guys we had. He's got a ton of talent. He's got power. He's got speed. There's a lot for him to offer. He's just never been afforded the opportunity to struggle and come out of it. And, most of his opportunities has been based on injuries, to Jet or whomever when he's been here. I see him in batting practice. He loves running around out there. So, I mean, if we did look at potentially moving a position for him, he'd be on board with just about anything to get in the lineup. And athletically, I think he's good enough to do it.
Bob, Carl Bird, what are your impressions of him as a baseball player? He has as high a ceiling as a baseball player since he was
I'd have to see a little bit more, but he's one of the great athletes that you're going to see. I mean, how many guys are able to do what he drafted in the first round and do a Heisman Trophy winner? There aren't many of those guys. So that athletically he can handle just about anything. And from what we saw the day he was with us in Oakland, he looked like he had an advanced approach at the plate. He wasn't trying to pull everything. He was hitting the ball the other way. He was showing some power. He's a pretty level-headed kid, for at a young age. So I think there's a very high ceiling for him.
As far as relievers generally and their year-to-year volatility, why do you think that happens, and what challenges that present in trying to play the bullpen?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of times it's the hardest element to kind of forecast. Guys will have a really good year and then next year not. Maybe it's workload, maybe not. We feel like we have a pretty good bullpen coming from last year and should be intact again for this year. So, I've been on teams where, guys have had great years and then, the leagues make an adjustment to them or whatever the next year. But, you look at the personnel that we have and we feel good about the guys that we've brought back. So, I think it's yet to be determined to see if our bullpen's as good as it was last year, but we feel good about it. Right. Right. Yeah, I think you're seeing more of it last year, but I think it probably started with Cleveland and in the postseason a couple years before that, how they use their bullpen. Now it's a little more difficult to do during the regular season when you're playing every day. The postseason you have some days off, but you're seeing teams come up with creative ways to combat whatever their deficiencies are, and that's going to continue. So, it's not like it's a fad that's 1 or 2 year fad. You're going to see more and more of it.